This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Katherine Shen. Vinyl records are getting their groove back. More and more people are spinning records, and in the midst of the vinyl revival, the Westport Library in Connecticut is the first library to record, produce, and release a vinyl record in the country. You've heard that right. The album is called Verso Records Volume 1. The library created a space where the public now has access to a recording studio, multiple audio and video capabilities, and a multi-use event space for concerts, theater, and even, get this, fashion shows. Today, we talk to members of this library about how they're rethinking and changing the emerging role of libraries overall and expanding its services beyond books. But now, we're focusing on the music and the process of creating a vinyl album. Joining me now are some of the people who are featured on Verso Records Volume 1. We have Travis Bell, who's the audio studios manager at the Verso Studios with Westport Library, as well as Janelle Capelbo, who is a band member of the band Danny Probably. Thank you both so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much.
And here's a question for our listeners. What do you use your local library for? Let us know at 888-720-9677 or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. So Travis, you've worked for a long time as an audio engineer. Would love to know, how did you end up working at a library?
Well, truthfully, I came here for one event. I met Bill, and he pitched me the vision of what a library could mean to the community and how media literacy could be such a valuable part of that. And quite frankly, I was hooked. I came for one event and I never left.
And we'll definitely talk more about media literacy in a little bit later on the show. But want to talk about, so how did you get started in terms of getting this studio going? What was your involvement?
Well, I came here when the studio had already been established and basically needed someone to run day-to-day operations and help schedule the public. And basically, as soon as that role became available and I met the team, I was on board. It was basically like a space that was waiting for me, quite frankly.
And I also want to ask, because you have a lot of different experiences as an audio engineer, and now you work at a library. Can you talk about the differences? I imagine that's quite the shift.
It was one of the most amazingly unique sound checks that I had in my life. That very first sound check here in the library, it felt wrong to be that loud initially, and then very quickly it was the most enjoyable space that I was able to mix in my career.
Well, and actually, just by you saying that, can you help us paint a picture of what that looks like literally? Because I think when we think of libraries, I'm thinking, it's quiet, you've got people reading, there's rustling of papers and whatnot, and occasionally someone's music might be bleeding out of their iPod and they have no idea that it's bleeding out. So what does that look like?
Well, this looks much more like a community performance space in the main Trev's Forum. And this space is used for everything from author talks to, community presentations. Like last night, for instance, we had an amazingly talented group from the Staples High School perform. And then, of course, musical performances. It runs the gamut of media, but it's really the main forum is much more of a performance community space.
And so in the past, when you recorded your music, what was that like for you? And how was producing music in the library different from what you've done before?
So when I came into the library, the integration of the technology here allowed for some very unique approaches to music production and media production in general, but it allowed us to capture music live. And in the past, I had been so focused on making music that would be widely appealing to a broader audience, or perhaps would maybe end up more copies would be listened to. But that meant making music more like a product, and it felt far less creative. What we're doing here is we put musicians live on stage, and we had them perform these amazing performances with no overdubs, no pitch correction, no punch-ins. These were real musicians performing really incredible music right on our stage live. And that's what was so unique about this is we didn't piecemeal something together to get these flawless performances that don't represent the heart and soul of music. We captured a moment in time from each of these artists. And that's really what I loved most about this project.
Well, and hilariously, because we are live as well, so I feel like there's some sort of paralleling going on with this conversation versus what you do at the library. And I'm wondering too, you mentioned the uniqueness of this is you're able to have these bands perform live and record, and you're not able to sort of go in and edit that like perfect piece of music. So in that case, do you feel like you get more sincere performances? Does it sound more genuine, or does that make any sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. So I think the best way to make a bad piece of music quickly is to use a click track. You can really make the music feel sterile and like I said earlier, just without a soul or without any heart. And it's hard to start describing these things until you realize they're missing in a piece of music. And when you don't have the whole band play as one band, you start to really lose the cohesive feeling of any genre of music. So that's why this was so important to me to capture each of these artists as a band.
And one of the bands that you were able to capture who is here with us at this moment is Danielle Capelbo, who is a band member of Danny Probably. She was featured on this album. Danielle, welcome to Where We Live.
Thank you, Catherine, so much for having all of us today.
No, we are super excited here. And I want to jump straight to it, too. How did you get connected with this project?
Sure. I learned about this amazing project from a New Haven DJ and filmmaker, Brendan Toller, who is a friend of the band and had seen us perform live a number of times around New Haven. And he thought we'd be a good fit for the project. And I'm deeply grateful he thought so.
And, this is really an exciting conversation because we're talking about libraries and music. So how did you react when you were like, oh, I'm going to record an album from a library?
Well, Travis and you have both mentioned that when you think of a library, you don't really think of getting loud unless you want to be shushed or catch a side eye. But when I heard we were going to make a recording in a library, especially with Travis, who I've worked with before, and Peter Cadis, a remarkable Grammy-winning producer, I was excited because I like a good adventure. And I thought, wow, that's something I've never done before.
Well, I can hear the shush and I can see the side eye. And did you have any special connection to libraries before doing this project?
Yes. Well, I'm an avid reader, and I spent a lot of time in college as a journalism student poring over microfiche at the Boston Public Library. But after I graduated from college, I spent a bit of time in New Fairfield leading a music and reading program for very young children. And I reached back into that memory when I was preparing for this discussion today and realized, wow, for me, music and the library really have always gone hand in hand.
That you just took me back to my own college experiences, pouring through all of the things in the library. And do you think having that experience in the past sort of informed your experience today? Did it make it more special, more unique? What was that like?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a beautiful space also. It's special to make a record in a library, right? Because you're surrounded by ideas, surrounded by beautiful words, beautiful concepts, but the Westport Public Library in particular is a uniquely beautiful space with wonderful, supportive people. So certainly it was very special. And I wanted to say about being loud in a library that actually this was the most amplified I've ever felt as a musician in terms of the energy and the enthusiasm behind the project. So kudos to the library for that.
No, definitely. We're a bunch of library lovers here, so definitely in a good spot. And so can you talk more about being in a place where you feel like you're surrounded by ideas? I love the way you describe that.
Yeah, well, it's inspiring, right? Libraries to me are places of, information, literacy, but also they inspire you to take action. And as a musical artist, the action that I usually want to take when I hear something really cool is I want to write a song about it. So it felt very fitting to be in this great space where there's, 3D printers and loads of wonderful books and getting to express ourselves at full volume.
And we mentioned before we went on air that I was actually just at the Westport Library for their library sale. And I remember taking just a random walk down there and I saw the space and I can totally see what you're saying. Literally, that is very inspiring. It's a really cool space to be. And I definitely did not have that growing up at my local library. And talking about songs, Danielle, can you talk about the song that you recorded specifically for this album?
Yeah, of course. So I'd like to take a moment to express my gratitude and love to the other bandmates, Adam and Jamie. And Adam was a big proponent of the song Cowboy. And just briefly, it's a breakup song for sure. It can apply to relationships, to circumstances in life. But for me, it's aspirational breakup song because it's a song about, not sweating it too much and just moseying on out. And that's not always how we feel when we have to let go of situations that aren't working. So I was definitely singing to myself at the time, reminding myself I could let things go. And I hope that's how people feel when they hear it as well.
And here's a small snippet of that track on the album. This is Cowboy.
I don't wanna be a cowboy, but you leave me no choice. I'll get my boots, my hat. I don't wanna see you in my rear view, begging me to come back. 'Cause the ending of the story has written itself, girl. We were born to act out. I don't mean to leave you crying. I've been riding in the saddle too, right here with you.
So I just want to say quickly that I know you mentioned this is a breakup song, Danielle, but I think it brought a lot of smiles to our faces here in the studio. It is such a lovely song.
Thank you so much.
How did it feel to be able to perform this live at a library? What was that experience like for you?
Unforgettable.
Hmm.
We knew that it would be a unique experience. And like Travis said, that we'd be capturing the track live, probably in a limited number of takes. And because the project was so special and because of the amount of energy and care the library put into it, our band really did our homework and we showed up, ready to rock. It was really special. I get chills actually thinking about it because it was so unlike any other recording experience I've had. You're out in that big, beautiful, spacious room. And in our case, Brendan Toller, who runs marketing at the studio, was video recording us. And so it's pretty different. Normally when I'm tracking vocals, I'm in a small booth and I can go into my mind in some deep place where I'm not, getting any kind of nervousness about singing. But in this case, I had to pull from somewhere deep and I hope it came across.
And I think it definitely did. And we talked about this with Travis earlier, too. In the past, when you recorded music, I'm assuming it's a different experience. What was it about this particular experience that felt different? Was it really unique? Did you feel like a different kind of energy, especially since you mentioned you would have recorded it in a tiny booth by yourself versus you're in a space where you have other people with you at the same time?
Totally. What made it so special was the team, from Travis to Brendan, of course, Bill, and the whole team at the library, my incredible bandmates who I can't express enough gratitude for, and Peter Kadis and his crew. So it really felt like we had a village around us that believed in us and wanted us to nail it. And it was a bit of a production in a really exciting way. So that made it really unforgettable for me.
Was there a moment that jumped out for you? Especially, I think you just mentioned unforgettable experience twice. So we'd love to know if there was something that, that was especially memorable that you can share with us.
Yeah. Well, I think when we were setting up on the stage, my bandmate Adam sat down at this beautiful piano that just happened to be up there and started playing out a few notes that you can actually hear on the recording we added afterward. And hearing those notes ring out in the library really brought it to life for me that, okay, we're about to sit down and make this record with a personal hero of mine and this library team that has a really cool vision for what the library can mean to the community. And I would say when I started tracking my vocals and I had the camera pointed at me, that's a moment I'll never forget because I just had to close my eyes and take a deep breath and say, okay, you've been preparing for this. You can do it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. You've been listening to Danielle Capelbo of Danny Probably, as well as Travis Bell, who is the audio studios manager at the Westport Library, and they will both be staying with us. Coming up next, we have two other local artists who will also be joining the conversation to talk about how they got connected with a project and what it felt like to record music in a library. And we're also about to hear another clip from Verso Records, Volume 1. This is Alexandra Burnett and the Stable Six with You're Okay. You can find a link to the album on our website, ctpublic.org/where we live. And you can also give us a call, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live.
Just relax, let it pass. Hey, it's okay, you got time. Take your time, and hey, it's okay, you got time. You got time, and hey, you're okay. Just breathe in and breathe out, and hey, you're okay. Just breathe in and breathe out.
This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. We've been listening and bopping to music from Verso Records, Volume 1. That's the first vinyl record that the Westport Library here in Connecticut recorded and produced. It's also the first time ever that a vinyl record was created from start to finish entirely by a library recording studio. During our last segment, we heard snippets of the song Cowboy that was performed by Danielle Capelbo and of the band Danny Probably, and we also listened to a clip of You're Okay by Alexandra Burnett and the Stable Six. But what's really exciting here is we'll have more music for you from our next guests, Dylan Hundley, who is a co-founder and lead singer of Lulu Lewis, and Dulio, who is an artist and DJ based out of New Haven. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you, Kat. It's great to be here.
And we also have Danielle Capelbo of Danny Probably, who is also still with us. And you can also join the conversation, 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. So I want to start with Dylan and want to ask you, how did you get connected with this project? Did you have any special connections to libraries before joining this?
We did. My partner in Lulu Lewis is Pablo Martin, and he is also lead guitar in the Tom Tom Club. So he works with Chris Franz and Tina Weymouth, and they're very close to the library, and they introduced us.
And, we've been talking about with both Danielle and Travis about recording in the library was pretty different from both of their usual processes. So was it different for you as well?
Completely. And
Tell us more.
And fantastic. Yes. I mean, it's so the way that that I would say many, if not most, independent bands work today is, we all have, home studios and work a lot in our own environments, and put it together that way. And we had the same reaction when we first were introduced to the library as everybody on this call so far is talking about it. It's like, wait, what?
That's actually my constant state of mind is, wait, what?
This place is amazing. This amazing, absolutely amazing studio, amazing live room, everything about it. So we were thrilled when they asked us to participate in this. And like Travis was talking about earlier as well, that normally, when you're recording an album, it's usually in pieces. And being able to record in this very old school way, with the band all at once live was really, really special.
So I wonder if you can help us dissect that a bit, because I think all of us have talked about recording music. You've been recording it in pieces. And I'm wondering if that might be like a new information for a lot of people because I don't know if I really ever thought about it until fairly recently. Like, oh, it's like you can record a line and then you can re-record the line again. And so can you talk about how that process was like for you versus being able to record an entire song live?
Sure. It's the same with film as well. I know that most people don't really think about this, that you get all these pieces and you pick all the best pieces normally and kind of put them all together. Right. And, so that you're able to create this sort of pristine product. But yeah, the original sort of inspiration for the song that we recorded for this was sort of the 60s. It matched perfectly because we were thinking about, how things used to be recorded before the digital world, right? And that was, bands in studios all at once. That was, how things originated. And it was wonderful to be able to have that experience and go back to that, with our original thoughts with the song were very much based in, Phil Spector type producing and Wrecking Crew, which was one of the most famous studio bands ever known. And to be able to do that was really, really fun,
And
particularly with this group of people.
right. No, I can definitely imagine just hearing the energy from everyone on this conversation really so far. And would love to ask, what did that feel like being able to do that? Just because I imagine when you're recording something in a tiny booth and you're going sort of line by line, or you can re-record something, the emotions or the energy behind that must be different.
It is completely. And, again, I'm going to give, some more props to Travis, who creates an incredible space, right? Everybody, our experience, and it sounds like everybody else's experience as well, is everybody feels incredibly well taken care of. Travis is very well organized. He's very kind. The equipment is all incredible. And, and being able to record all together with our guys is just, it's to be able to deliver what we deliver live, onto recording it's extremely satisfying. I'm very grateful for it.
Well, I definitely want to talk to you about the track that you recorded for the album in a little bit, but I also want to ask, is there something different about recording for a vinyl album versus, a CD, or knowing that something's going to be digital? What was that like for you?
Well, we approach all that pretty much the same, I would say, because all of our recordings we put to vinyl. So that the consideration for that is really done after the fact in mastering and mixing, and you very often have different versions for digital and different versions for vinyl. So that's pretty normal.
Right, gotcha. And so, well, tell us about the track that you recorded for the album.
Sure, it's called "All Just Pretending." And again, it was a song that we wrote very early days for our project. And yeah, when we were dreaming about Northern Soul and Dusty Springfield and trying to combine, soul, with more rock and to be able to create that kind of really big live room sound. And we got to do it with these guys.
All right. And then we are also going to hear some clips from that.
Cool.
So I want to jump to Danielle real quick, just because we are trying to get Dulio back online, actually. But Danielle, as we were talking with Travis earlier about how this was all sort of a project with local musicians that was a part of this. And from your perspective, why do you think it's so important to have that local voice?
What a great question. Well, I think the most important reason to recognize, uplift, and celebrate local music is because it's there. And in Connecticut, it's fantastic. And when we don't nurture and cultivate the artists that are right in our neighborhood, right in our town, and take them for granted, then they start to lose the resources and the stage and the platform they need to express themselves. So it's such a beautiful decision the library made with all of its resources and connections to focus its energy on homegrown grassroots local art. And something I want to say about that is every aspect of this project was approached really with the artist at the forefront, creating this free opportunity to use a world-class studio. And even the platform, aside from the vinyl that the library chose, Bandcamp, which is far more equitable for local artists, it was really thoughtful and impressive, and I'm grateful they did it.
And Dylan, would love for you to respond to what Danelle just shared about the local music scene, and also what are your thoughts about being able to focus on local musicians as part of this project?
I couldn't agree more with Danielle and how she puts it. It's being able to give a voice to the local community in this capacity is super important, and gives local folks an opportunity, where they don't normally get it, and this is how, I think it's a great way. It's very generous of the library to offer music discovery in this capacity. So,
Well, and now we want to bring Dulio into the conversation. Dulio, welcome to the show. Or maybe Dulio is not connected yet, and that is very much okay. We will try to get Dulio back online. But I do want to ask both Dylan and Danelle, actually, we were just kind of talking about this in terms of recording for CD or vinyl. It's not really that much of a difference in terms of the recording experience, but we do want to ask, especially in the age of Spotify and digital media, do you think there is an importance of recording and releasing this album on vinyl? Dylan, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, I'm a huge advocate for vinyl, period. And I'm so happy that there has been this huge resurgence in the past few years. But, the experience of holding, an album in your hands is completely different. You cannot get that through digital, right? And being able to touch it, feel it, smell it, and and to look at the artwork, to be able to read the liner notes, all of those pieces, and being able to physically put the platter down onto a record player is a very special experience. And the sound quality is also far superior. So I do think it's hugely important.
Well, I love that you mentioned, reading the liners and whatnots. And I must admit, I did not grow up with vinyl. I don't have a vinyl player, but I do enjoy back in the day, when you get CDs, like it's, you're right. You're holding it in your hand is so different, and being able to sort of like read the cover, and there's cover art and all that.
Yes.
And that's something that you definitely aren't able to get with a digital album. And quite frankly, I do like something that I can hold in my hand and that's paper and I can flip through. But that's just me being a nerd in that way. But Danielle would also like to ask, why vinyl? Is there a special importance behind that for you?
Well, I want to echo what Dylan said about, the physical, tangible experience of having a vinyl record with the liner notes and opening up the record and seeing what's inside, which has always been a really exciting experience for me. I appreciate about streaming that it makes art so accessible, and yet nothing really compares as an artist to having that physical product in your hand and understanding all the intention and all of the care that went into making a recording with great sound integrity and then actually producing the record. So to me, it underscored the commitment of the library to make this a really unique experience for us and for the community.
And I think everyone has talked about how unique this experience has been. And certainly, like we mentioned earlier, when you think of libraries, you don't really think about music, let alone actually creating music in that space. So Danielle, I would love to know, how do you think this experience might change what a library can be? This is obviously a very big project, but do you think this is something that can be more accessible to people across the state and maybe across the nation?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, libraries are such a pillar of our society, and they play such a vital role in upholding an equitable community and a democracy. And of course, like as the world is changing and digitizing and funding for so many public institutions is diminishing, libraries have to stay creative in order to remind folks how vital they are. And so I think this is a great example of a library with a strong set of resources. Innovating. That's such a buzzword, but in this case, it feels really accurate. And yeah, I would love to see artists from all around the state having a similar opportunity that we had, because there is no shortage of remarkable talent and diverse voices in Connecticut. And I hope that more libraries across the country are inspired to do this. At libraries in the region, I've seen teaching kitchens, so it's anything that a library can do to create a unique space for creation. I hope they do.
And we're gonna try to get Dulio on. Dulio, are you there?
Yes, I am.
He is here. That is reason for celebration. Everyone do a virtual clap. I want to jump straight to it because you had a chance to record with this project. Tell us about what your experience was like being able to create music in a library space.
Well, it's very interesting that I didn't know that a library was capable of having such extreme, super high quality equipment. When I walked into the library, it didn't seem like a library to me. It seemed like a facility for everyone. And I was amazed at the technology and how much the structure and the architect and as well as the design of the library was. So I was really, really like jaw dropping stuck when I walked into the main auditorium room and as well saw the other small multimedia rooms.
And you recorded your track with another local musician. Can you talk about what that collaboration process was like?
That actually, Mighty Moonshine was the band, and I've met her at a party one time. I was DJing, and then I went up to her and said, "Oh my God, you're such a lit person. Who are you? How come I don't know you?" And then we had our first introduction there. And then I've seen her a few times here and there and was just like, yo, I love this girl so much. And then I found out that she could sing. And then I met with my friend DJ BT, Brandon, and we've DJed together a few times. And he said, maybe we should put you and Mighty Moonshine together. And I was like, that's interesting. So we scheduled the studio session. And once we got there, it was just like I'm listening to her voice, and it was like a voice that's coming out of the sky, like it was like I would say Charleston Heston and Moses.
That is amazing.
It was coming out of the sky, and it was the atmosphere, and it was smooth, and it was beautiful. And then I had these jazz cones in my drum machine, and then once we started getting the groove going, I kind of started hitting this melody, and it just went perfect.
Well, just the way you describe that, I'm like seeing the sky and the clouds kind of,
Right.
bursting. My skin has cleared. It's just like the way you describe that is just so magical. So like what was it like recording that experience in a library space, especially since you mentioned, and I think everyone has mentioned, it was just something so unexpected.
Well, the weird thing for me was I thought it was just going to be some sort of a video shoot, honestly. And I didn't realize that we were like recording. But it just kind of everything was so on the fly. And in some parts of the session, we were kind of like, all over the place. The drum was somewhere different. She was everywhere. I was in the middle. The keyboard guy, he was somewhere there. And I was just saying to myself, wow, we are kind of all over the place. And I don't know how this is going to work out. But the engineer, Travis, right? That's his name, right?
Yes.
Like he pieced it all together and made magic. And it was just, when I heard it and the quality of it, I was just so amazed. And, I was like, you know what? I would really love to record my next album at the Versal Library.
Well,
Versal.
you heard it here first, people. Dulio's first album. Well, and then can you talk about the show? The show? Can you talk about the song that you recorded for the album?
Um, because I mean, like what I'm hearing, like when she came up with the lyrics and we did the melody, and she says, "I'm gonna love you just because." It's like I felt that she was saying that with all your faults, goods and bads, I'm still there for you just because, because I love you. And that runs deep with a lot of people because a lot of people, they take shorts with their partners in certain situations, or through their livelihood, they cut back something that they normally would do. But now I feel that with that song, it can relate and understand. And I really hope that some way, somehow, that song gets out there more so the general public, the world itself, can hear it.
Well, we are going to be able to hear a little bit of that right now. Here is a clip of the song that Dulio was just talking about. Well, Dulio, I just want to say after that clip, I'm going to be marinating in that and thinking about love for the rest of the day and week. So thank you for sharing that experience with us. And we just have about a minute left in this segment, but I want to ask you, Dulio, before our show, you told our producer that you didn't really have a connection with libraries. So how do you think this particular experience has changed your perception of libraries?
Well, it gives me, I'm from New Haven, so it gives me an idea that maybe I should poke around the library and talk to some general managers or some staff members and see what can we do to get the community to come in such a big space, and how can we utilize this space to do local events, and talk to a bunch of people in our community that are doing great stuff that just need that sort of exposure, and that New Haven Library can help us grow as a unit, being that the Verso the Westport Library is a sample of what we can look at and nurture in our own community. So it can offspring into different communities just by what this has started right here. And maybe New Haven might want to do a record, or maybe they have already, but who knows?
Well, thank you so much for sharing. You've been listening to Dulio, who's an artist and DJ based out of New Haven. And before we go, we must also say goodbye to Dylan Hundley, who is the co-founder and lead singer of Lulu Lewis, as well as Danelle Capelbo of Danny Probably. Thank you so much to all of you for jamming with us live in a very different way today on Where We Live.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And when we come back, we'll be chatting with Westport Library's executive director about the origin story of the recording studio. And here's also another clip from Verso Records Volume 1. This is Tiny Ocean with Culling of an Ache. Stay with us.
Graceful, hideous, without a face. Cover lore slips over and under.
This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. It's all about music and libraries today. And if you think the mix is a unique one, it certainly is, because the Westport Library is the first library in the country to have recorded, produced, and released a vinyl album from start to finish. And here to talk to us about how that all got started is Bill Harmer. He's the executive director at the Westport Library. Thank you so much, Bill, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it.
And still with us is Travis Bell. He's the audio studios manager at the Verso Studios with Westport Library. So, Travis, I actually want to start with you real quick. You talked a little bit earlier about media and digital literacy. So, I want to ask, how would you like to see the library sort of continue to be able to support creators and artists?
I would love to stay on our current course because I believe in what we've done, and I believe we have such a value to offer to the community around us, and not just Westport. I mean, all communities, because this isn't just for Westporters, and it's not even just about music. It's about so much more, and that's really where the media literacy piece comes into play that we talked about.
And I think, we've been listening to the artists who were involved with this whole process with music. To them, it's so unique. It's so new and innovative. So how do you think this experience might change what a library can be and what resources it can offer or continue to offer to its communities?
I believe that we have the opportunity to set an example for what can be done in any library. And we can set the example of what a podcast can do for a family, or for what it can do for a small business. And when you have access to tools like this, it levels the playing field. And to me, if we can have this in libraries across the country, or something like this in libraries across the country, we can have an incredible change in communities across the country.
And on that note, I also want to ask, I think there's a lot of people out there who are interested in starting their own podcast, or to record an album, or even to record a video, but we know it's very time consuming and it can be expensive because you need equipment to get all of that done. So are you hoping that with all of this equipment and expertise on site, that more people will be able to explore and learn about these skill sets?
Absolutely. I mean, such a huge part of what Verso is connecting people with the tools and helping them take the next step in their media journey. And to be able to do that on a daily basis is so incredibly rewarding. And to just be able to meet people and hear their stories and help them, make their content reach more people, or sound a little better, or look a little better. When we get to do that, there's really nothing else quite like it.
And Bill, I want to bring you into the conversation. We've heard a bit from Travis about what this studio looks like. Can you tell us about the origins of this idea and how it came to be?
Sure. The library is getting ready to celebrate its 4-year anniversary. We finished up a $21 million capital campaign and transformation project to essentially redesign the library from top to bottom. And really our focus was on creating these community spaces to reinforce the mission of the public library as a 21st century model for lifelong learning. And I just want to say too that I don't know that we necessarily want to reinvent the library. I think what we want to do is remind the community and communities that libraries have always been about learning, and just to reinforce that they're institutions of lifelong learning and knowledge. And what we're trying to do is evolve that and bring, we're using technology and media to evolve that so that we can connect with a broader segment of the community members who are interested in books, but other means of knowledge and information.
Well, and then with evolving, so, why a music studio or a music recording studio? Why Verso Records?
Well, we believe strongly that supporting and nurturing creativity is a form of learning. It enriches growth of a larger community. It allows us ways for contributing in meaningful ways to the development of creative types. So it's an honor and a privilege for us to be able to do that. We've done that with authors and writers for decades. Why not musicians and filmmakers and podcasters and video game designers and everything else?
Well, and you mentioned technology, and we're talking about digital literacy and with creativity and having this being accessible to people. And so with these new sort of audio and visual capabilities that you have, how can that help enhance digital literacy in the community, do you think, Bill?
Well, I think for one, it's a way to demystify the technology by giving people an opportunity to get their hands on it and learn how to deconstruct it and use it. So we're not only teaching people how to use the technology, but more important, how to apply it to their lives, and to support and nurture their creativity, sort of on a project by project basis. It's the Versal Studios allows us to customize the learning experience for community members.
And so you mentioned earlier, too, this is a very big project and it took a lot of resources. Can you talk about what the funding process was like?
Sure. Well, for one, it was very much a community project, a passion project that involved a lot of stakeholders, the support of our board, our donors, the community, all of the artists and musicians who contributed to this fantastic record that we're all very proud of, and our staff for bringing it to life. But we are blessed to have an incredibly supportive community who backed us on this mission and vision of ours to help underwrite this project for us. But it also is a commercial project as well. So I would encourage people to purchase the record, and all the funds from that record will go to fund the next volume of Verso Records.
Well, you actually just touched on my next question. We got about 2 minutes left here, but I still want to ask, will there be future records coming up? And how do you think this experience might change what a library can be? Like, I know you mentioned you're not here to reinvent, but to sort of talk about the potential of what a library can do.
Well, yes, there will be a volume 2. We will, the focus will still be on supporting emerging musicians and giving them a platform to express themselves. We need to get through this first volume, but then we're anxious to get going on volume 2. We're going to add a new twist, though, to this next one by continuing to look for ways to get the community involved in the production side of making a record. So not only are we supporting the musicians and the artists and the bands, but I want to provide an opportunity for community members to get involved in the production of the actual recording of the record. And that could be anything from learning the audio production side of it by working with Travis to helping set up for a recording session. We have plans for creating a documentary film about the making of the next record, with the members of the community being part of the crew that will help document that story, and then provide a production credit for those who get involved in the making of the record, so that everything that we do is community focused. The community is at the center of our vision, and it's looking for creative ways to get people involved in a project like this. You don't have to be a musician to get involved. Maybe just have a passion for music, maybe have a passion for the technology. But this idea of this connection to the community, this private-public partnership that we have is incredibly important as a way to engage the community, to create a sense of belonging, that this library belongs to them.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. It does take a village, so all the luck to this amazing community-based project. You've been listening to Bill Harmer. He's the executive director at the Westport Library, and Travis Bell. He's the audio studios manager at the Verso Studios with Westport Library. Thank you both so much for sharing your experiences with us today.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
And you can find a link to the album on our website, cdpublic.org/wherewelive. And playing us out is the track I Could Write a Book by the John Collins Jazz Quartet. You can also find a link to the album on our website at cdpublic.org/wherewelive. I'm Catherine Shen. Today's show is produced by Tess Terrible. Our technical producer is Kat Pastor. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app. And thank you so much for listening.